The book release of the week was of that man from Chicago whose name is taboo in present company. This week, we have the release of a book about the man from Delhi, also from Harvard, whose name is also taboo. But the chaps who are not taboo are all here. The point about a book of someone is that it has to be interesting. And no one can say that Subramanian Swamy is not interesting. He is more than interesting. He is acutely controversial. I must compliment the author. No woman I know has more data on her husband than she has. Thank God Swamy has no skeletons in his cupboard, otherwise they would have also toppled up. It is filled with the minutest details about Swamy, what he did before the emergency, during the emergency, and after the emergency. It's fascinating to read, written extremely well by one who is competent to write. Everyone can't write, I assure you, but she can. Yes, it is adulatory. Such a book would be. She gives it away at the start with the quote from Hamlet, "To thine own self be true, and it must follow, as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man." Adulatory, but true. It's a bit harsh on some people that Roxna and Swamy don't like and have reason not to like what to me was dear old Atalji. But then life is full of strange concatenation of circumstances that makes us like people and not like people. But the question of the month, ladies and gentlemen, why was he not accommodated in the cabinet reshuffle? I will tell you. Subramanian Swamy wrote in the autumn of 2009, and I had something to do with it, a book called Corruption and Corporate Governance in India, Satyam, Spectrum and Sundaram. If you don't have it, go and get it, if it's still available. And I am concerned that the reason why a man of his intellect, knowledge and ability, a rarity in all political parties, is not in a position of power is because of that short book. In that book he advocated kicking around the high and mighty occupying top positions in corporations. And he called his remedy a simple mathematical analysis. Listen to it. One, on the probability, this analysis is based on the probability of defection, detection, the cost to the corrupt of such detection, and three, averaged by the expected value of the gain from the corrupt act. Now, in simple terms, it means simply this. Even if the probability of detection is low, and generally it is very low in this country, so long as the cost of detection to the corrupt is some large multiple of the gain from the corrupt act itself, no rational person would choose to give or accept a bribe. That was his mathematical theory, that is his mathematical theory. And according to Swamy's mathematical equation, if we imposed a penalty of 99 times of the bribe taken, only then it would not be worthwhile for people to be corrupt, even if the probability of detection is, as it was in India in 2009 and still is today, as low as 1 in 100. In my view, frankly, don't tell anybody, but this is the reason why he's not a cabinet minister. Roxna writes that even after lifting of the emergency, even till 1991, Swamy stayed on in the truncated Janata Party, which was, as she calls it, a tank full of crocodiles and crabs. Frankly, to me, it's a matter of great regret that having his own political party, he chose to merge it with another, which, like all political parties in India, is also a tank full of crocodiles and crabs, the climbers and the pull-downers. I did not know till I read the book, and this is interesting, that Swamy had developed very cordial links with General Ziaullah, who had got Zulfikar Bhutto tried and hanged of the charge of conspiracy to murder a fellow Sindhi politician. But still many people in Karachi believe that Bhutto may have caused the death of quite a few politicians in his time, but not this Sindhi politician. But then in law, if you are convicted in a court of an offence, then you have surely committed it, whether you have or not. When Bhutto's appeal went to the Supreme Court of Pakistan, my old friend, our old friend, Babsi and I knew him for many, many years. Dr. Patel was a judge of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. He dissented along with another judge, but they were in a minority and Bhutto was hanged. But I must tell you the story of General Zia. The general always liked to ingratiate himself with people at whatever cost. When General Zia, after having scored his victory over Bhutto, ordained a new oath for the judges of the Supreme Court, an oath to the martial law administrator, which was to General Zia himself, the noble Dr. Patel promptly resigned. And he told us this, that evening, he received a telephone call from the President's palace that the President invites him to dinner. Now, Dora got cold feet. He was a very difficult chap. He always got cold feet if anybody threatened him. So he shivered. Should he go to the dinner or not? Was the dinner invitation a lesson to him to defy the President, or was it a genuine one? Anyway, with these grim thoughts, he put on his best suit and went over to the presidential palace. And the President, and possibly Swamy will tell us, I had never met Zia. He was full of charm. Came to the door to see him off, put his hand on Dorab's shoulder and said, Dorab, if there's any problem at any time, you just have to call me. Now, we were both members of the International Commission of Jurists, and whenever we said something against Pakistan for violation of human rights and so on, Dorab Patel would also speak. But we always noticed he never spoke against President Zia. That's one very important thing in life, you know. If somebody befriends you, it's very difficult not to befriend him or her. And I can tell you that the book reveals something which I didn't expect, I didn't know. Believe me, it's extremely well written. Those who haven't bought it, go and buy it. It's very, very well written. Apparently, Mrs. Gandhi, of all people, Mrs. Gandhi of the emergency, had a very different side to her. And once when because he had something to do with Arunachal Pradesh, and he wanted a helicopter of the IAF to come over and pick him up from over Tibet back into India. Mrs. Gandhi said, why don't you stay on in Tibet and never come back? but then she had a great sense of humor. And he was the one who was very angry with Operation Blue Star. But then when it happened, and when she met him in Parliament, she said to him that you were right. That was a difficult problem. And he tried to extricate it and said, why don't you do something now? And she said, it's too late now. And she was right, it was too late. Because a few days later she was assassinated. He was very friendly with Rajiv Gandhi. I don't know why he's not in the Congress party. He was very friendly with Rajiv Gandhi as well. And the tragedy, of course, of Rajiv, we all know. My wife and I also knew a bit Rajiv, and he's a very good chap. But then he was not very friendly with Mrs. Gandhi, the other junior Gandhi. And apparently, when she told him, why did you run away during the emergency? You are a traitor. And so whenever you tell him something which he gets angry, then of course you've had it. So he said, Madam, what do you take me for? An Italian general who always runs out of the war? I never run out anyway. The other thing which I think was very touching, for me at least, and that's why I welcome him that he's not in any cabinet. Because if you are in a cabinet, you are enclosed. Remember, cabinet of ministers means you are always enclosed. You can't come out of it. What one judge told him after delivering judgment in the Jayalalitha case, where she was sentenced, etc., and so was Shashikala. And he told him, pointing his finger at him in court, that I hope you will never let us down in your fight for corruption. So I hope, Swamy, that you never let us down.
I think there are many today in the Congress and maybe in the BJP also who would echo that hope of Mrs. Gandhi. Been friends and enemies with the same person, whether it is Mrs. Gandhi or whether it is Chandrasekhar and so on. What is it about him that ability, and also is he better at making friends or is he better at making enemies?
I'm actually a fan of Dr. Swamy from the time of the emergency, because I was a junior reporter in The Statesman when you did your little Scarlet Pimpernel act, and you were a big hero. Everybody was cheering for you. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm in his corner on everything. I believe that his enemies are mostly there because, this is a great country for mediocrity. As a man who's been very successful in the television business, and the one thing that Dr. Swamy is not, actually, and this is, I mean this truly, and it comes out in the book, that wherever he went, sorry, is it not working very well? Wherever you went, there were people trying to drag you down because, unfortunately, you shone above them. And as a journalist, I have seen many like you who've actually not had such a loving wife who would write a book about it. But I promise you, it is the loss for India, or may I sit here, because really 99% of the people that I have met in political circles, in bureaucratic circles in India, have risen to the top out of mediocrity. So as far as I can see, the reason why you have not been in this cabinet, and there are other reasons which I'm sure you know better than me, but it's really, it's a country where mediocrity has thrived. And as far as the friends are concerned, it's not about friends, I mean, I'm often criticized for criticizing Menika's sister-in-law, but it's not because I don't like her face. I disagree with her policies, and I was really appalled that in the 10 years that she was de facto Prime Minister of India, I was virtually the only journalist who dared say, listen, stop criticizing that poor little Sardarji. Let's get down to who's really making these policies. So, the thing with friendship and enemies in politics, as far as I'm concerned, is very complicated. And, basically, if you shine, you get pushed down.
Gandhi, your take on the many friends and many enemies of Dr. Swamy?
The opposite of mine.
And which one is more?
Before I answer that, let me just put a small preface. When Roxna Swamy invited me to speak at this at the release, I almost doubled up because I wasn't sure what role I was supposed to play for a variety of reasons. First of all, I thought that I would be seen as Dr. Swamy's supporters see me as this anti-national libtard prostitute, morally corrupt, ideologically corrupt, financially corrupt, and worse. So I just wondered whether I had strayed into the wrong gathering, and was I right in saying yes to it? There were 3 or 4 reasons for that. One is Roxna Swamy and my mother went to school in Ahmedabad, so that becomes very difficult to say no to someone who was a very close friend of my mother. Number 2, she was very kind enough to say, but actually I see you as open, liberal-minded and honest. So I saw that as a character certificate, and I was almost tempted for her to say it loudly so that all of the Dr. Swamy supporters also endorse that one day as a major character certificate. Number 3 was my own experience with Dr. Swamy, which is that, since you asked about friends and enemies, the one thing is very clear. I'm not sure whether you want Dr. Swamy as a friend, but you certainly don't want him as an enemy. and there are enough people who've gone in and out of jail who've realized that over the years. And I had a personal experience a few years ago when the Augusta Westland story broke. In my enthusiasm to get a debate going, as television often does, rather than the story, I rang up Dr. Swamy and said, you have to come for the 9 o'clock show. It's on Augusta Westland. This is your opportunity. And as it turned out, the Congress didn't send a guest. So about with an hour to go for the program, I rang up Dr. Swamy and said, I'm afraid the debate is off. We're just doing a story because the Congress is not coming. And Dr. Swamy tells me, oh, Sonia must have rung you up. And I, for a moment, doubled up that Sonia Gandhi's rung me up. And not only that, he then said, I'm going to put it on Twitter that Sonia Gandhi has rung you up, which is why you're not inviting me, you're disinviting me. And I was petrified because Dr. Swamy has a very large following of patriotic tweeters, as he calls them, since the rest of us are unpatriotic as a result, I presume. And I was terrified. And that little exchange with Dr. Swamy convinced me forever, as I said earlier, that even if you don't want to be a friend of Swamy, for God's sake, don't become an enemy. And, in this book, those friends and enemies seem to waver all the time. And, you've got Rajiv Gandhi, with whom Dr. Swamy claims between 1989 and 1991, they were spending 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. plotting how to bring down VP Singh. And today he's plotting how to send his wife to jail. It's interesting that one of the paradoxes is that in this gathering here today, the only BJP minister I see is the other daughter-in-law of Mrs. Gandhi, who wanted to send Dr. Swamy to jail during the emergency. And the paradoxes run right through. I think the strength of this book in particular is that she gives us an insight, Roxanne gives us an insight into a world that, as a political journalist, one is fascinated by. But she doesn't answer the paradoxes. And the paradoxes are, frankly, make me wonder who really still is Dr. Subramanian Swamy. Is he the brave man who valiantly has defended the victims of Hashimpura? Or is he that man who pours the most acerbic venom against the minorities at times and denies them their heritage? Is Dr. Swamy that brave man who took on the emergency in the time that he did? Or is he, in a sense, someone who's, over the years allowed himself at times to compromise with the system? Is Dr. Swamy this man crusader against corruption, which he is? Or was he part of one of the most corrupt governments that India had, i.e. the government of Mr. Chandrasekhar? Is Dr. Swamy this brave man, or is he bitter? Because, he strikes out against Mr. Vajpayee, who is, I thought, the Bhishma Pitama of the BJP. And I'm sure once the BJP reads the book, they will probably certainly not attend the next book release. The moment they read the chapter, the passages of Mr. Vajpayee. So who is really this man? And I think that we still wait to see. I think there is a lot of Dr. Swamy which is to be admired, and there's a lot to be worried about. And that they reside in the same persona makes it even more fascinating. So I don't know whether he's who his friends are and who his enemies are, because they could easily switch tomorrow. I think Fali Nariman is right. I think Dr. Swamy's actual space should be not necessarily where he lies today, but where he sits tomorrow. Who knows where Dr. Swamy will go next, and who he will target. I've often wondered who his target was in the book, in certain lines that you write, when you talk about the finance ministry being denied to someone who once wrote a paper with Paul Samuelson. Is that the post that Dr. Swamy aspires to? And if so, what are his views on the incumbent, which you very carefully avoid, I see in the book, which is why suddenly the book stops at 1992. As I was leafing through the pages, I was just waiting for the part where Dr. Swamy was about to explode, I thought, on the current regime. And then I realized that he's very carefully sidestepped that, which means that he still has ambition and future. I thought that this book, normally you write these books when you've decided enough's enough.
Did you see Veer Sanghvi's interview yesterday? He was very clear.
That Dr. Swamy has a future.
About the FM.
Also, and as I see, the FM is not around. So that clearly shows. But I think, therefore, with Dr. Swamy, you never know who his friends and enemies are. And I hope that this paradox is unraveled, because it troubles me. A man of such intelligence and intellect, why do you need to sometimes resort to coarse machinations? A man of such, who's done who's in a sense at one level taken on the establishment at various times. Why do you today deny a community their heritage and resort to this coarse language, or indulge people who resort to this coarse language and normalize that coarse language almost as if that is the new normal?
Okay, I have to disagree with you as always. Whichever on a panel I'm going to say something which is going to sound awful to you, but I think that Dr. Swamy is absolutely right that on Ayodhya, and he hasn't said anything personally against Muslims. He's basically said that the Muslim community has too long been indulged in a lot of minority communalism, which is dangerous. And it is dangerous. And when you see what's going on in the world, he's right. I actually think that if the Muslims listened to him on Ayodhya and gave up that broken down piece of, whatever it is now, and let it, and actually Christian Janmabhoomi, I'm not a Hindu, I don't believe in God, and I'm not religious, but it was the shock of my life to go to Christian Janmabhoomi and see that on top of the cell in which Krishna is born is an Eidgah. So just stop, let's listen.
It's not about appeasement. It's about Hindutva politics being majoritarian and Hindutva politics denying a community equal citizenship.
He hasn't done
to my
that.
mind, that is not acceptable.
He hasn't done that.
It's not about Ayodhya. And enough blood has been spewed over Ayodhya.
I thought we're talking about Dr. Swamy.
Yes, Dr. Swamy himself has said at times that Muslims essentially who live in India are Hindus and therefore must accept and embrace the dominant philosophy in this country. Why? That is Savarkar's Hindutva, which has caused enough poison and division in this country, which I am unwilling to accept. He's entitled to his views. He's entitled to his views. I am not entitled to follow Swamy's views. I respect him for his war against corruption. I find it poisonous when he speaks about the politics of Hindutva. That's my line. That's my view. And I believe enough blood has flown in this country based on this poisonous division that we create in the mind.
If you were right, he would not want one of the worst. It's just 1 second.
Forget appeasement.
One of the worst.
Is a dog whistle.
Hang on. One of the worst incidents of communal violence I've ever seen in my life was in Hashimpura, where Muslims from the age of 13, there were about 70 people to 80, were shot dead in a truck. Okay? And there was only one man who stood up for that.
I said that.
So I don't think that he's biased in the way you think. You're making him sound like a kind of, Karol Bagh, Hindutva Gunda, which I really don't think that he
I am instructed by my client to say that I will be the only person to be asked to release the next book.
Can I bring you in on this characterization of Dr. Swamy?
The fact of the matter is that we are straying very far from my book.
There's a reason why you're not a favorite artist.
Let her go on.
My book definitely ends in 1991.
Ma'am, why don't you bring it closer?
My book very definitely ends in 1991, 1992. And it looks to me as if the debate here today is on anything except that period.
But you married him, so I'm afraid that's the problem.
As I said, I'm not going into the political situation today. I think it's too inflammatory. As you can see, Rajdeep and Taveen have almost come to blows on the question. That's what he stands on it. It's more to make you think of other things that have crept into the Indian body. In fact, I'm rather disappointed that we have not discussed at all my thesis about the Lutyens elite. I had developed in the book my ideas about how there is a very distinct aristocracy of intelligentsia in Delhi, which rules India. And it's something that I was hoping might be discussed when we were here.
Yes, but I was going to bring the Tavleen in on this because Tavleen, you actually coined this phrase, if I'm not
From
wrong.
my sins.
Fakeries of Latvians or something of that sort.
Yeah, I actually have to apologize for having coined it. I wrote an article some years ago which was called Latvians something or the other in Open magazine. Until then, there was no Latvians elite. Nobody discussed it that way.
You know who to blame,
But,
Dr. Swamy?
but there is a kind of liberal left stronghold that controls every television network owned by Ambani, it doesn't matter who, and there is a liberal left intellectual that controls the thought process in Delhi. And I think that Subramanian Swamy did not actually ever, sorry?
Have you ever watched Republic of Times now when you're saying this?
No, 1 minute. Let us see.
I do watch it. Yeah, I do watch them, and since one of them is owned by a BJP MP, what is there to discuss? The man who owns Republic is a BJP MP. So, if you can have the left with NDTV, you can have the right. Everybody has a... Yeah? No, okay.
We do the questions later, even come in a bit later.
Do you want to come and do this instead of me? I'm quite happy. Come, who's this very excited lady? You come here. No, but certainly in the book, what comes out is a very, very clear description of that Latvians' political stranglehold over the media, over political parties, and that stranglehold it crosses party lines. So it doesn't matter whether you're in the Congress party or the BJP, and until actually Narendra Modi came along, they controlled the levers of power in the city, because they were in the evening when Parliament was over, they met in each other's houses, and it was really complicit, and there were understandings between these parties, and there still are. That, corruption cases against relations, for instance, would not be brought. We all know what I'm talking about. I don't want to go into the details. But, this exists. And you brought that up very well in your book. And if it only for that, it's worth reading.
Let me just make that point. And I think, it's a point which needs to be discussed. But the fact is, we're living in the past. Just a minute. 2 points. Let me.
You're living in the past.
I should be allowed. Yeah, you're reducing this to a television debate, which it shouldn't be. But there are 2 points that I want to make. There is probably a Latvians elite, as the book also seems to suggest, and maybe that Latvians elite try to keep Dr. Swamy out, irrespective of political party affiliations during a particular period. Let's also be very clear that Dr. Swamy, in a sense, is also a creation of this Latvians elite. I mean, Dr. Swamy has spent much of his life in Latvians land. And we are a society where there are rotation of elites. So the elite that and which is why I think the book shouldn't have stopped at 1992, because the elites have changed. Someone in the audience just now shouted, is the Latvians elite today in the TV media that Tavleen Singh is speaking for? I mean, let's be honest. All that has happened is a rotation of elites. A new elite has come with the same sense of arrogance, with the same sense of almost entitlement, which the earlier elite had. And that, if Dr. Swamy's been kept out by both elites, that's unfortunate. Once by the right and once by the left. But there are elites.
He's a product of the elites.
No, I think he's a product, because let's be honest. I think the fact is, from where he comes, he didn't have a real constituency. It's a problem that many intelligent, dare I say, Brahmins will face in the politics of today. Dr. Swamy had to go and fight his first election in first Rajya Sabha Lucknow through Nanaji Deshmukh and L.K. Advani. Then he goes to Mumbai in 77 to fight in the elections there from Bombay Northeast. Then eventually we even had to fight one election from Madurai. I've seen that happen with Mani Shankar Iyer, who had to hang on once to the coattails of Mamata Banerjee to fight an election from Darjeeling. Look, if you are a particular kind of person who doesn't have the mass appeal, then you have to rely on some constituency. Dr. Swamy now has found a new one in Twitter. you know. But I'm saying at the end of the day, there are limitations of politicians. This Latvian, and this is where the problem is coming. We now engage in name calling. You're Latvian's elite, you're Bhakt, you're libtard. For God's sake, yeah, we are Indian citizens. And if you want to have a civilized dialogue, you should have it shorn of name calling. Latvian's elite is being used by those who have benefited from Latvian's elite, who've been part of Latvian's elite, to demonize the other. And we have to stop this demonization of the other. And that's where I have my differences with Dr. Swamy also. You know, there's too much of bitterness out there. I do believe he could have got much more. But there are others too in this world who could have got much more. And when that bile takes over, then your intellect leaves you. And that's where I believe we must stop looking at people through Latvian's elite. And of course the Congress elite benefited over the years. The BJP elite is benefiting today. Let's go through a list of all the appointments that this government has made in the last 24 months or 36 months. Let's look at they are the new Congress. This is the new Congress with, Arun Shourie was absolutely right. They are Congress with the cow. That's all. That's what they are. They practice the same kind of politics. They are part of the new elite. And they are, and we want to run away from it. Why are we running away from it? To use Latvian's elite to demonize someone is to prevent a civilized dialogue from taking place. And one of the unfortunate aspects of the last couple of years in particular is a coarseness has come. People are getting divided, friends, families, individuals. Each one of us as Indian citizens is getting divided. Oh, you're Latvian's elite, you're libtard. Why? He fought for Hashimpura, hats off to him. He indulges the most hateful tweeters. Sorry, Dr. Swamy, don't agree. Why can't I say both without being bracketed as a Latvian's elite or a libtard? I'm an Indian citizen with a free mind of my own, which is why I respect Roxana when she said, come with an open mind liberal. That's what Indian society should be. Using platforms to speak to everyone. We have to stop looking at each other as us and them. Too much of this us and them is going to reduce us as Indians, in my view, to lesser Indians. And I don't want to be a lesser Indian. Sorry, are you a Latvian's elite? He's one of the finest minds that we have. Is he Latvian's elite? He's one of the greatest liberal minds this country has. We should salute people like him without calling them Latvian's elite.
I come from Burma. It is true. But I'm not a Rohingya. Yes. What's the question?
What do you understand by Latvian's elite? And is it as bad a word as...
I don't understand Latvians there. I only see all the lovely buildings that are there. But I agree there used to be that sort of a mentality. A Latvian Delhi mentality, if someone wants to put it like that. But then you can say all sorts of things about cows and horses and also. Because, see, I personally think that we have to now cultivate a climate of tolerance, for God's sake. I eat beef, I don't eat beef, I eat meat, I eat chicken, I don't eat chicken, I eat vegetables. I've become a vegetable myself. In fact, truthfully, I'm almost a vegetable. I don't eat, we only eat vegetables. No, that's true. But therefore, let's please accommodate each other. What does it matter where we come from, whether it's from Latvians or from Burma or from anywhere else in the world? Makes no difference. You see, we are all citizens of a country. We all express our views. That doesn't mean we are anti-national. If we criticize our government, doesn't mean that we are anti-national. Soli Sorabji wrote a very nice article on the right to dissent only recently in the Times of India. Excellent. And that's what I believe. What's wrong with being dissent? I may not agree with you, you may not agree with me. And we as lawyers, I must tell you that we don't agree with each other for a hell of a long time. It goes on and on. But when we come outside the court, we are friends, we know each other, we dine with each other. So I don't know why we can't stop this bickering, as it were, against one another. And I don't think we'll be a force to reckon with unless our education system also doesn't instill all these funny ideas. Yes, you must know everything about India, yes, definitely, but you must know everything about the world also. Yes, you must know about the kings and queens of England, all right, you must know about the presidents of America and what they did. But you must have I mean, that was Gandhiji's philosophy. That was Gandhiji's philosophy. Let the air, let the wind blow through all the corridors, and my windows are open for all thoughts. I mean, let's have more of that, I personally believe. But of course, we are straying from the book, quite frankly, because yes, there is that debate, but do we need a debate with regard to intolerance, or what might lead to intolerance? Yes, if somebody wants to build a temple, certainly that's an excellent idea. Build the temple whenever you feel like it. Was it wrong to pull down a particular structure? Yes, it was. At a particular point of time, it was. Now, we can live with both thoughts. What's the difficulty? It was wrong to pull down any structure, taking the law into your own hands, but nonetheless, you can still have a temple. That makes no difference. Why can't we be eclectic, a little more eclectic in our thoughts? And that's what I believe personally.
In fact, Roxna in her book talks about what she calls an evening brain trust. She said this is what gathers on the television channels every evening, and it's part of the Lutyens elite, as she says. The same people drive an agenda, gather together to get there, and they blacked out Dr. Swamy. So what was keeping him back, what got him back into the channels was the vernacular press and the fact that being Dr. Swamy, you cannot really ignore it for too long. So your take on this?
Yeah, what I was trying to say is not whether there's an elite of politicians or journalists. What I was trying to say is that there is a kind of control system which includes journalists and politicians, etc., which does actually constitute, and in the book that comes out very well.
Actually, what I was trying to say is that the whole agenda was to make certain people into what I call non-persons.
Yes.
You wipe them off the public consciousness in every way you can.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true.
That is what I was
Yeah, I think that in the earlier times, and it's not as if there was great tolerance before, let me tell you. There was a blacklist in Mr. Sharda Prasad and Mrs. Gandhi's time of journalists who were not to be given access. And I'm sure that there was a list of politicians who were not allowed into certain areas. So it's a very ugly culture. That is what I meant by a Lutyens syndrome. It's not whether for a start, they should all be kicked out of those houses. That's the big problem. That they've taken the most expensive land in the country, and it's occupied by politicians and bureaucrats. And if you kick them all out of their houses and let them rent out a place in Greater Calcutta, they'll understand the problems of the country. But there is a syndrome which is brought out very well in the book, as is, what I really liked, actually, I was saying to Kumi earlier, is that whole description of India the way it was in the 60s, the deprivation of it, that you needed to get a car. If you needed a car, you needed help. If you needed a gas connection, you needed an MP to sign off on it. And what really has changed, and we should be proud of that, is that has gone. That that there's a certain kind of that socialist idea of deprivation. We were not very different to the Soviet Union, in those years. And that comes out very well in the book. So we come back to the book from that. But when I talked about Lutyens, it's not about this elite and that elite. They've just moved into their houses. It's the same syndrome. It's the same syndrome. And where are the Dalit journalists? Have you ever met a Dalit journalist? There are excellent Dalit writers.
I will take you with me. Come.
Okay, no, 1 minute. There are excellent Dalit writers. There's not a single Dalit journalist in any newspaper in Delhi. Tell me why. Okay, so there is a control by a certain system, and that system has to be broken down.
But that's true of all sectors of life, right? That's not necessarily true of Lutyens Delhi. Travel across this country,
discriminate. The national press is here.
Sure. The national press is here. The national press, in a sense, mirrors a country which, at the end of the day, is still trapped at one level in feudalism, in privilege, and has been for a long time. Nobody denies that. But there is a lot of change which is also taking place. I think we have to recognize the changes that are taking place, which is why also 1992 is perhaps, if I may say so, the wrong time to stop. Because I believe the changes that have taken place in India post-92 are very dramatic. The mandalization of the politics of this country means that 75% of your politicians today belong to OBCs, belong to scheduled castes, belong to scheduled tribe. India has changed. I actually feel that Dr. Swamy, in a sense, is trying to relive his we all have our glory moments. I remember George Fernandez showing me pictures of, when he was the trade union leader in the 1960s, taking on S.K. Patil, when George, with his chains, took on the emergency during the rail roko. Similarly, the picture of Dr. Swamy with a beard as a Sardarji entering emergency will be a defining image. But we all try to hark back to that one nostalgic moment when we've shown the system what we are. But the world has changed since then. And I sometimes wonder whether we have, all of us as we grow up have to mature and change with it. We can't now live in the India of the 70s. We are now in India of 2017, which is a very different country. Yes, there are very few Dalit journalists, for example, to come to the Dalit journalists, but I will take you to meet hosts of Dalit writers and intellectuals who are doing remarkable stuff. Come with me to Aurangabad, to the Baba Sahib Ambedkar.
I said that great writers. Why are there no journalists?
Why are there no journalists? And that also is not true. Newsrooms do have them, but we are a society where there are sharp discriminations and divides. Nobody denies that. And nexuses exist in all fields. Politics is particularly privileged. There's a closed shop. The Congress was a master at dynasty politics in building those politics as a closed shop. But other parties are no different today. I mean, which is the political party today which genuinely promotes merit, which only promotes merit? If I may be allowed, I'm writing a book next month which is out, which is on cricket. And to my mind, the reason why India is now the #1 team in the world in cricket, which is an area where there's a lovely photo of Dr. Swamy receiving a Man of the Match award from Indira Gandhi, is because cricket is now truly meritocratic. The Dhoniization of cricket means that India is now the superpower. If we Dhoniized every field of endeavor in our lives, we'd be a better country. The only two real areas in my view which are now truly, in a sense, meritocratic, one is sport and the other is science and technology.
Okay.
But if you look beyond that, all politics, why only the Congress party? Virtually every party today denies merit in the truest sense of the term. Do you believe that the people who are in your cabinet are the best people that we have in this country? Surely not. For God's sake, they are not.
On that note, when you're talking about,
That's why he's denied a place in the cabinet.
I was just going to come to that. Why is Dr. Swamy not in the cabinet? Is it because it suits Modi perhaps to have him outside attacking people like Subramanian, like
No, if you believe that, you believe anything.
Then why is he not in the cabinet? Mr. Nariman, you tell us.
Yes, I'll tell you. I'll tell you why he's not in the cabinet. My view, I have I don't have a hotline to anybody in the cabinet. But I can assure you that the reason why I believe he's not in the cabinet is only this, that he's too damn forthright. And he says anything off the cuff which doesn't please everybody. And besides, as I mentioned when I opened, there are good corporates and nasty corporates, and it's the nasty corporates who have kept him out.
Is it the corporate that has kept him out?
Oh,
Something
yes.
you think?
Oh, yes.
In Chandrasekhar's time, I told you why
No,
money was not
there are.
finance.
I'm going to get into trouble for saying this. I did some investigation when I was reading the book, and you were denied the New Delhi seat because of certain people who Roxna has not been very kind about in the book as well. And there's no question about that you were denied it because you have one very powerful enemy in the cabinet.
But at the end of the day, that's because Priya.
No, she just asked me why he was denied it.
I
What's
think.
your reason? What's your answer why he's not in the cabinet?
No, because at the end, for the very reason that every political party in this country works with cabals and coteries. That's the nature of politics. Now, either you become part of them. Now, you see, Dr. Swamy believes he should be Prime Minister, right? Now, if you
He
can't
might do a good job.
No, your own sense of self-esteem or whatever it is, believe that he's better.
Certainly finance minister.
So he does, right? So I think, and he's entitled to that. But once you do that in our Indian cabinet system, that's going to be difficult to sustain, particularly when you have an authoritarian leader at the top who believes that he will decide who is in which cabinet post. But look at the attack that Dr. Swamy had on Raghuram Rajan last year. To my mind, that was an example of what we don't want in our politics. If Dr. Swamy had a problem with Dr. Rajan, he's a member of parliament, he should have gone to the Prime Minister, they should have settled it in closed doors. You target someone because he's got a green card, for God's sake. That's again the hypocrisy and the paradoxes that we have in our politics. We welcome all kinds of people with green cards into this country, but Raghuram Rajan is anti-national. And whatever else Raghu is, he's not anti-national. And that is my problem.
1 minute. I think he criticized his policies.
No,
And
once you do
frankly,
that, which government will make you a minister if you're going to call the RBI governor while he's there
Raghuram
anti-national?
Rajan did irreparable damage to the Indian economy. I totally agree with Subramanian Swamy on that. And he lowered interest rates in the beginning. He made no reforms to the banking system, what we're paying for now, but this is not in the book, so let's stick with the book.
Yeah, no, since you say that, I would like to know, Tavleen Singh, that we should then be talking about demonetization
We're
and the
talking
absurd
about
decisions that we
Roxna's
take.
book. We're talking about
Sure.
Roxna's book.
Yeah.
That's another debate. We fight this out.
Yeah, but again, this why call someone anti-national? You may disagree with someone. Raghuram Rajan had his book.
I don't think he did.
Not in the book, because the book, as I said, ends in 92.
Why does the book end in 92? That's the other question.
As far as Dr. Raghuram Swamy was concerned, it was a question of disagreeing with his fiscal policy.
Sure.
And that was all Swamy was doing. In fact, it was the Lutyens press which suddenly turned it into a witch hunt.
Yeah.
That's how I presented it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, by the way.
You may read those portions.
That's absolutely untrue. Raghuram Rajan was called, Raghuram Rajan's identity, holding a green card was held against him. I will take you to 90 economists out of 100 who will say exactly the opposite of what you said just now, Tavleen, that losing Raghuram Rajan was a big mistake. Now, that is open to debate. I have no problem questioning Raghuram Rajan's policies, but when you start calling someone anti-national because you
I
hold a
don't
green
think Dr.
card,
Swamy ever said
He
that.
never did that. Come on.
He never said that.
No,
Never.
he said his mindset wasn't right. That was all he said.
I will show you the
He
quote
said his
of
mindset
Dr.
wasn't right.
Swamy, that Raghuram Rajan as a holder of green card,
No, he did not. No, he
let's
did not.
This is classic post-truth society. Do not spread a lie in the name of a post-truth society.
You could be part of that too.
Okay, we'll leave the Raghuram Rajan debate for another time.
Why you have a soft corner for Raghuram Rajan?
Please discuss.
I have no soft corner for Raghuram Rajan.
Yeah, we're discussing the book and I'm going to
Not
now.
Raghuram Rajan to be discussed.
We're done with Raghuram Rajan for now, sir.
You're all invited to the release of his book.
Which he has plugged, which is not on Raghuram Rajan. But we're going to now throw open the floor to some questions. If you have any questions that are not about Raghuram Rajan.
But only about the book, yeah.
It's better you tell it to write the.
Only about the book, sir.
Not this everything.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah, come on. That lady.
You have the lady.
My question to Nariman sir. Sir, so Nariman Swamy was one party leader. He is a one person leader in his whole of political party before the joining the BJP. Or second thing, you are saying that he is a corruption crusader, but he was unable to mass appeal. So how you people see he is a politician, as a politician, successful or a failure? Because he wanted to be a FM of this country, unable to FM.
So his Dr. Swamy is successful or
He is unable to PM.
No, that's precisely the dilemma that I reflected. The dilemma is of a mass leader, right? The dilemma is, how do I become a mass leader in today's Indian politics? Indian politics works on vote banks. Indian politics increasingly works on what vote bank you have. What was Dr. Swamy's vote bank was a challenge he's always faced through his career. And it is admirable that despite not having that vote bank, he still survived. I call him the great survivor of Indian politics more than anything else.
Okay, before I take another question, I'd like
In fact, I have deep regret that having a party, as you call it, a one-man party or a two-man party, I'm not bothered, but having a party, I wish he had kept the party as his own and not joined some other party. In fact, he would have been far more, in my view, far more popular, far better off, and he'd be able to hit at various things that are wrong under all systems, whether you call it one system or another.
but that's not stopping him right now either.
Yeah, but so far as he's concerned, you must see how he argues his cases in court. Judges have told me, there's a former Chief Justice who's with us. Judges have told me that he argues with great ability, with introspection, after considering everything. And if the judge tells him something, he doesn't go shouting at the judge. He says, well, that's not correct because this, that, and the other. So he's one of the most admirable specimens of non-lawyer litigants whom I have ever come across.
And the most successful. Sheila, you have a question?
Roxna, I've seen you in my neighborhood. We live in the same colony. I wanted to ask you for many years, and now I'm asking you in public, that you love Swamy so much. Everybody has opinion on him, but I think you love him like a teenage girl.
And that's why she's a good wife.
No, so, not wife, I'm saying lover.
I think I was presenting obviously
So-
a sympathetic view of Swamy.
So
It would be absurd.
So better, see, these people, I know we are fed up of this debate of Delhi and communal and secular in Ayodhya. Please tell us what clicks so well and either what is so good in Swamy.
I think, Roxana, we must talk about love.
Exactly. I have never seen very few wives, and I'm telling you, you are not just a wife. You are a lover. And it's fantastic. So please tell us what exactly clicked within you that you have adored relationship, suffered. I'm sure you must have suffered also. Love makes you suffer. So tell us what is so few things about Swamy which none of us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. But in fact, you're going along the same track as my editor, who wanted my sex life. It was never my intention to obtrude on the book. It was my intention to try and present Swamy as I saw him. And I think I have succeeded, at least as far as his followers are concerned. I think I've succeeded in presenting a sympathetic view of Swamy.
Yes, of course.
That's all I was trying to do.
You want to know mundane aspect of Swamy? Gentleman here.
Roxna, I haven't read the book as yet, but can you tell us, see, what is your take on the chemistry of Swamy with Jayalalitha and Sonia Gandhi? Because he hosted a dinner in Ashoka Hotel, and both of them were there.
Yes, if you will recall, that was a 1999 episode.
Then
As I said, I made a conscious decision to cover only a certain period. It was a conscious decision, and I don't wish to discuss beyond that period. But by the way, part of the reason for writing the book was to set the record straight on what happened in those years up to 1992.
Why did you stop at 92?
It was a natural time to stop. You know, it was a time when
a sequel. There's going to be a sequel.
no, there's going to be no sequel as far as I can see. But you see, certain myths had grown up, certain things about Swamy, etc. I was trying to set the record straight, and I think that's what I'm doing.
The ladies and mics.
My question was saying with the lady who asked the question, what inspired her to write this book?
Thank you. And everybody has been fighting on the stage, and I thought it is Arnab Goswami back here. So, I would like to compliment you, man, that you have written a book about such a difficult person in such beautiful language. So, I must compliment you. And since the title says it's a roller coaster ride, I would also like to know if the choice is yours whether you want to reply or not. Was there a very difficult moment which you also faced with Dr. Swamy once in a while? If you want to share, I would welcome it.
No, I mean, the whole book is a roller coaster ride. The cycle of a roller coaster ride.
if you want to really pry into somebody's marriage and so on, this is not the occasion. But I'll tell you something, that we had a leader in the law, Chandu Dastari, who had a wife called Cicely, very admirable, the couple. He was one of the masterminds of the law. And it is 50th wedding anniversary. We all said speech, and he got up and made a speech. He said, life is very difficult in marriage. The first 49 years are the most difficult.
Priya, the one thing about the book, while you focus on the politics, and I think this is where Dr. Swamy's role becomes more valuable, is the law. I know because Dr. Swamy and I were petitioners in the same case together. I never thought the moment would come. I joined him. He led the petition against criminal defamation.
That's right.
An obnoxious, abominable law which has had a bad judgment passed by the current Chief Justice when he was not Chief Justice. Judge, I hope that doesn't attract contempt. But please read the judgment. Awful judgment which hasn't had enough public scrutiny. And Dr. Swamy, to his credit, because he's got several defamation cases against him, and I, because I have a few, joined hands together against that law. Now, I think that role of Dr. Swamy as a litigant, as taking up cases which are uncomfortable and discomforting to others, as Tavleen is right, that many others could have, maybe journalists could have picked up those cases that Dr. Swamy did. I think is a role which is equitable. Again, it comes to the paradox of the man. That as a lawyer, there's much to admire in the kind of windmills that he's tilted against. But then there's the politician as well.
They're not windmills.
Some of them are not. Some of them are not. But I wanted to ask you, Roxana, about what you've said about Mr. Vajpayee. Do you fear that at a level it will prevent someone like Dr. Swamy from ever really being part of the BJP? That he is in the BJP and yet out of it. If the Bhishma Pitama, whatever he's, I guess Advani will be Bhishma Pitama. Do you believe that your criticism of Mr. Vajpayee's attitude towards Dr. Swamy will mean that he can never really be seen as part of the BJP?
No, it's also possible that the BJP may come around to Swamy's view of Vajpayee.
Now you know where she gets it from. You think Dr. Swamy is done to read this book.
Moving on, apart from paradoxes, I want to know a little bit of history. Was Swamy ever involved, or have you met JP and JP's impact on him? Jayaprakash Narayan? I haven't read the book, and which I think many of us haven't, so you can share that.
I'm very impressed with this.
It's all in the book, yeah.
There's a very long-standing relationship with JP. Originally, when JP had come to America, he had met Swamy, they had long discussions. It comes out clearly in the book. They had a certain view of how India should develop. And JP felt that Swamy should come back to India to help in developing that view.
Any more questions?
There's a lady.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Roxana, have you given the book to Modi? Have you given the book to Mr. Modi?
No, because Mr. Modi comes at a much later stage in the history of
Have you
India.
given your book to Modi to read?
No, I don't think it's necessary to.
I feel it's necessary.
This deals with a period and an aspect of Swamy which is much before the Modi era.
Is it any coincidence that the release is on the same day as Mr. Modi's birthday? That the old order changes, yielding place to the new?
Actually, it's today. It's come about today because IIC was not free.
I was looking for a Swamy-like conspiracy theory.
This is how rumors go. This is how rumors go.
Conspiracy.
Okay, before I call Dr. Swamy to the stage, I just have one last question for my panelists. We have two journalists on stage.
That's right.
If you was, how would you give writing a profile of Dr. Swamy, what would you call him? I called him a loose cannon and he got very upset. He said, I'm very focused, I'm not a loose cannon. He likes to be called a maverick, which is what he told me in one interview, saying it's a horse that can't be tamed. What would you call him?
I think that he's the most misunderstood politician in India.
Dr. Swamy को गुस्सा क्यों आता है, और more importantly, who really is Dr. Subramanian Swamy? Please tell us.
And some of the answers there in the book.
I'll tell you something which J.R.D. Tata once told me, and that occurred to him, that when he was being introduced by one of our local leaders, who didn't know exactly who he was or how to introduce him, he said, and as for Mr. J.R.D. Tata, the less said about him, the better.
On that note, Dr. Swamy, can we come and ask you to clear your own recording? Yes. Come and speak to us, yes.
He has a lot to answer for.
As you can see, I'm not sensitive to criticism.
So far.
And when I want to reply to criticism, I'll go back to my Twitter.
Oh God, tomorrow morning.
Actually, I had not read the book till Roxna had practically finished writing. And she gave me a copy which came back from the printer as the first draft. And I never gave her any suggestions because we have been married, I think, 52 years. And I always felt that she made up her own mind. And therefore, there was no point in telling her this is how it should be done or that should be done. And this book is our effort, and it surprised me how well she writes. Maybe instead of us, maybe along with her sister, she should have been a journalist too. But she has brought out many things which I thought I would have forgotten, and she had maintained meticulously a record of all my reports in newspapers, press cuttings, right from the day I entered politics. Now, when you are in politics, you must learn to face criticism. But as a general rule, I have found that when injustice was done to me, the events actually went in my favor. When I came back to India, became a full professor at IIT. Mrs. Gandhi took very strong objections to my writings against socialism. In those days, nobody would say anything against socialism or the Soviet Union. And therefore, she just passed an order that I should be sacked. Even though I was a full professor, I was given a letter at 5:15 in the afternoon saying that effectively from 5 o'clock, you're no more professor. And they sent people to throw my luggage out of the faculty housing I was in. At that time, an astrologer told me that you have Nicha Banga Raja Yoga.
What is that?
Which translated means that when you go down, you'll go up 10 times more. So, the next thing I knew was that the RSS people, particularly Nanaji Deshmukh, etc., tracked me down on the basis of my writings on the atom bomb, self-reliance, and brought me into Parliament. And Parliament led to the emergency where, of course, I made a name because of that particular event. And soon I became Lok Sabha MP from Bombay. And the first thing happened when I came to Delhi was a meeting with Morarji Desai, who asked me, "You were sacked from the IIT, no?" I said, "Yes, I was. I was a full professor. I was not thrown out. I've got a court case going, but it'll take time." So he says, "I am appointing you on the board of governors of IIT Delhi." So after the first meeting of the board, when I came back, I met him again on another occasion, and he asked me, how's IIT? So I said, "I'm sitting with those people who sacked me, and I don't like it at all." So he called his secretary, Shankar, a man called V. Shankar, and said, sack all the board members and appoint new ones. So I got my revenge then. And 22 years later, I won the case also. The court held that this order of dismissal is totally bad in law, and it is as if Swamy has continued for all these years as a professor. So I went back to IIT, and at that time I had already become a cabinet minister in Mr. Chandrasekhar's government. And I took a charge as a professor, and then immediately gave a resignation letter to be effective from the next day. And after that, I asked for all my back salary. They were ready to give it, but they didn't like the idea of paying 18% interest. So I thought, anyway, I don't need money. So let me drag on this case as long as possible. And now it is reaching a final conclusion. And if I get my back salary, which I will get, it will be quite a hefty sum. So in the end, the sacking of the IIT has paid me off quite well. And this has happened everywhere. I may not have what he calls as mass base. I don't know what he means by mass base. Generally speaking, I don't pay much attention to journalists saying anything. But the fact is that I have been elected 6 times. 3 times to Lok Sabha, 3 times to Rajya Sabha. And if I had so many enemies, why should I have been brought into parliament? There were hectic efforts to keep me out. So this book was not really about me, and when I write my biography or autobiography, a lot of people will lose their reputation and sleep. And I'll certainly include at least 1 page about you.
Oh, I thought that was the deal, yeah, that I come here, I get a character certificate, you don't write about me.
But what I would like to say is that Roxna had been through all these upheavals, and at not one stage she really complained.
Yeah.
She came actually from she was daughter of an imperious ICS officer. She had seen a very secure life. She was in fact part of the Lutyens living in Tughlaq Road. And she saw it all through. And nor did she ever find me losing any hope in the future. And she stuck with me through very, very difficult times. And therefore, I think the book I should probably write a book about her. My first teacher in law was her.
Wow.
She actually was a PhD in mathematics. I met her first at Harvard. And she then became a PhD, and she started teaching in IIT with me. Mrs. Gandhi, who got me sacked, also ensured she wanted me to return to America. And Mrs. Gandhi wanted me to return to America because having a very bad effect on the students and changing their minds about socialism. So she, in order to ensure that I don't stay in India, decided that she too must be sacked. So she also was sacked from her teaching. She was a teacher, she was an assistant professor in mathematics. They sacked her. So we were without a job. And but then, as I said, that the Rajya Sabha came along, and I became a member of the Rajya Sabha, and things changed. Many years later, in 1980, because of Rajiv Gandhi, he once dragged me to meet Mrs. Gandhi. And she told me, if I had known that you would stay in India and not return to Harvard, I would never have let you go from IIT in the first place. Because you have become such a headache for me. So, therefore, at all these times, when I started doing politics and people started filing defamation cases against me, it was Roxna who first educated me on how to argue your own case, because then you won't have to pay a lawyer. And she did the work free. Later on, the topping and the icing on my learning was from another teacher sitting here. I don't know whether you'll own up to it or not. But Mr. Pali Nariman was always available. Whenever I had a difficult problem, I'd send him an email or I'd go to his place and learn from him. So the job, the focus of my life, according to me, is I will do whatever I want to do. And two, I'll give as good as I get. So if somebody picks on me, I will chase him. I chase him to the end. Mr. Chidambaram had tried to send me to jail on what he called as the fanatic Hindu version of how to fight terrorism. And I don't know whether Mr. Tulsi is sitting here. He was here in the early part of the party of the day. He, in fact, went to court and got a stay from my being sent to jail for an article I wrote in the DNA newspaper on how to fight terrorism. Those who give me lectures on tolerance should read how quickly this was done. And I was going to be painted as one of those Hindu terror guys. And then at that stage I said, if there is Nichabanga Raju Yoga, then one day I will get Chidambaram and send him to jail. And I'm about to send his son to jail, and he won't be very far behind. And if I were to complete my giving as good as I get, then probably Congress Party will hold its working committee meeting in PR jail. So in a sense, I would say that at no stage I had ever despaired that something bad has happened to me. I don't feel that it was wrong to deny me a cabinet position, I must tell you.
That's it.
And if you talk to Modi, he will tell you I never spoke to him about giving me a cabinet position. Nor did I ever tell him to make me a member of parliament. Nor for that Delhi seat, I wanted the seat. I didn't want the seat. It was the whole party which the then president of the Delhi state, who's now a minister, he told me that 80% of the workers want you as a candidate. And that's how I became candidate. And the candidate I was chosen because they thought that I would fix Mr. Kejriwal good and proper in the campaign. And but it was denied. I never complained.
Who denied, sir?
Well, I mean, it was denied ultimately by the election committee. So why do you want names that we mentioned here? Because this is not my book. When my book comes, I'll name names without hesitation. So, therefore, suddenly one day I get, 2 years later, a call from the party president, Mr. Amit Shah, saying that I should drop into his house. I dropped into his house. And he said that you are going to parliament. And you just send me your biodata because we are going to nominate you for being the most distinguished economist of the country. So I came in now as a representative of the president. Now tomorrow, when my Rahu leaves the Jalamastan, I won't be surprised that I get a similar call saying that you're going to be a minister. It's the philosophy that it is not something that you hanker for, but it's something in your destiny which happens. I came from an ordinary family, middle class family. I went to Harvard, became a professor there, taught for years and years. I joint authored with Nobel laureates, and I came back and then entered politics, been a member of parliament now 6 times. And live a comfortable life, and have a wife who looks after the house perhaps as well as any Parsi woman ever can.
Because she's a Parsi.
I agree.
That's very male chauvinistic.
It is not male chauvinistic. She actually controls me. She tells me, you have to eat at this time, you have to sleep at this time, your clothes must be put in this shelf of the cupboard, and she keeps accounts. And I never touch money because she does all the accounts. So therefore, strictly speaking, she was She was all through the period very unhappy that I wasn't recognized as well as she recognized me. So therefore she wrote this book. I never told her, don't write this book or change this, because I know it's useless telling her anything. She made up her mind. You know what Parsi wives are like. And talking about communalism, I have a Muslim son-in-law. I have a sister-in-law who's a Christian. I have practically every religion, and none of them say what Rajdeep Sardesai says about me. I don't know whether we live in the same world or not. So, in total, I would say this book is something to give you a peep into how a wife saw her husband going through ups and downs. But I enjoyed every minute of it, and whatever I have done, I wanted to do. I never believe, as Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that results are your rights. Lord Krishna says result is his right to give you when the time comes. And so when the time comes, I'll get what I need to get. But at the same time, I have had the pleasure of doing unhampered whatever I wanted to do. And that's what really makes me happy with my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, that's it for this evening. Thank you so much. Well, as we said, being Dr. Swamy is never boring, so I'm sure you'll enjoy this book. Thank you so much for coming here today.